back to Explore Overland. And here we are heading south down the Mount Terrible track, which is the main fire break across the ridge here. And as I said in the first video, it's a little bit hard to follow along here, with most people just taking off into the fire trail itself, which I don't think is a big deal because it is so hard to follow. And as you can see, you know, because a lot of it's been cleared for the fire trail at the top and it still hasn't really grown back thick yet, the whole way down here the views are absolutely spectacular. Just here, a big tree had fallen across the crest of the track here, and the only way around was off to the side, and both sides here are quite steep, so you had to gun it a little bit not to head off down the side of the slope. One of the good things about this track, and I'm quite sure it's well used, but is the rocky base. Like most of the high countries like this, but this track here can be driven in any weather. One of the other good things about it is because it's so open and the views are so great, is that there's just an unlimited amount of places to stop and have lunch with spectacular views, which you don't get on most tracks in the high country. And you get a good view with the drone flyover here at just how steep it is off both sides of the crest here, as the drone flies down along the ridgeline. This really is a great track that's so close to the edge of Melbourne. It's the sort of thing you can come out and do over a weekend, and really enjoyable trip with spectacular views, great camp spots, and quite accessible. As you're coming up over crests and looking out over the views, you can spot the other fire towers on the tracks heading down as you follow it down. You know, mainly just as points of interest for people who are following their maps to get a really good idea of where they actually are on the ground by looking out over those towers which are marked on the map. An old disco, it's a bit like a horse. You can sort of just let go of the reins and it just does its thing along here. It's just soaks it up like nothing. Really great vehicle if you've got a bad back. An old disco's just got that extreme off-road heritage, you know, from the Camel Trophy to all those extreme events around the world. It's just one of those classic old four-wheel drives which this is just nothing. It's a day's work for the disco. And the Discovery, unlike 99% of other four-wheel drives, that were made for the road, it's actually got an off-road military platform underneath it, which the others just don't have. It was built in reverse. It went from being a military vehicle to having a passenger vehicle sat on top of the chassis. And for that reason, that's what makes it just an incredible vehicle off-road. And most passenger type vehicles just can't get near it off-road, just from the size, the weight, the agile. And they're a really great thing. And at the risk of sounding a little bit biased there, the thing about these Discoveries is I've taken it to places and done things you just wouldn't dream of doing in a vehicle, and in standard form as they left the factory. And it sort of does breed that bias, but I just there's not a cooler vehicle to be cruising along the ridge tops and out four-wheel driving. Just that classic that classic old historic four-wheel drive. You just can't beat it. You know what I mean? There's very few vehicles that you can do what I do with this thing. Like it hardly gets any maintenance, and then I'll just come up with what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go, and I'll just throw stuff in it, jump in it and go. And I don't think twice about doing it, even though I'll be off doing it by myself, remotely. There's no risk. It's just such an incredibly reliable vehicle that goes wherever you point it. And it's a very easy vehicle because of its size and weight to self-recover too. It's not a big deal to get yourself out of a really tight situation with the old Disco either. Okay, that's enough of trying to sell people 35-year-old Land Rovers. These next couple of bits of footage, this one here, this is actually Hope Track, which takes you down to Big River Road. I misjudged with the signposts, trying to work out which track was which, with the confusion up there at the top, and ended up heading down to Big River Road and back. But it's just around the corner from Moonlight Spur track. This is what I mean. It's just take your pick. If I was doing this bit of track again, I'd just go straight up over the top. The trip around wasn't too bad, but there's actually 3 tracks doing the same thing, heading in the same direction here. And this is where going straight up over that hill I said comes out. It joins back with where I've just come around. I'm sure there was some steep stuff up on that fire break there, but it's a pretty easy track, as you can see. Looking straight up over the valley out to Eildon there. And this is a good example of taking the second track at those signposts. Instead of taking the one marked Mount Terrible, I've gone up over the fire break, and this was quite steep going up, but down the other side, as you'll see in a second, it was a really steep drop off that. But what made it quite interesting is, even though it was rocky and it had a lot of water on it, for some reason in the pockets it had held the water, so it was really marshy and rocky at the same time. It was very slippery going down. But the view here doesn't show how steep it is. It's first gear, low range, and I was on the handbrake as well trying to pull it up. What you sort of can't pick up in the video is that the car's really sliding around in and out of these rocks here. And Moonlight Spur track is really worth doing. Like the Mount Terrible track, it's just one of those tracks where you've got a lot of different things coming at you, but the views off it as it drops away at these really steep points along the track as it heads down into the Golden Valley are really spectacular. And while you could do this in a standard unlocked four-wheel drive, no problems in the dry, I definitely recommend, if you're going to be caught out in the wet or it's bigger, heavier four-wheel drive, that you've got at least one locker and a winch and some all-terrain tyres before you tackle this one, because there is some steep pinches in it, which could be problematic if it's raining, that's for sure. And I like to send the drone up as much as I can on these tracks, you know, so you can get a really good idea of the layout. But it does get quite expensive with the drone, because when the foliage is so overgrown and out on the track, the drone's bit the dust a few times, and it does get quite expensive. But if I can, I do try to fly it through here to give everybody an idea of what the track's really like. And even with all the sensors, the LiDAR and the active track, that certainly doesn't stop you smashing into trees. There's absolutely no guarantee once you're up and in the foliage like this that you're going to fly the drone through there without crashing. And that's one of the reasons you don't see many people doing this at all, if any. With 90% or greater of drone footage is taken well above the treetops, up in the safe zone. And Moonlight Spur track faces across towards Mount Buller and Mount Skeen, so you're getting really great views of the snow on the way down as well. This is one of the steep pinches in the track here. It gets so steep just down here that I had to pull up hard, and the drone actually come around and passed me. You'll see a bit of shaky footage from the drone every now and then because I'd already crashed it before I headed out on this trip, and the gimbal was a bit out of skew. But by the time this trip was over, I'd crashed it another time really bad, and I ended up using a piece of sunglass arms and everything to try and get the gimbal back up and running so I could film the last hour or so, or last 2 hours or so. this is another steep pinch here, which doesn't look that bad coming up to it on film, but it's a lot steeper than it looks. And just as a point of interest on the Mount Terrible firebreak, it actually goes for 48 kilometres. It goes from Eildon and across down through Ryan Spur track as well as a continuation. And it's one of the big strategic firebreaks for the wildfires in the high country if they get going. And it does have that added bonus for us four-wheel drivers and people that actually get out into the bush and use it, of it being well maintained and clear views from the ridge lines all the way down. There seems to be a whole lot of strategic fire burns taking place in the last 12 months. You know, I was out at Lazzarini's a while ago, and as they're redoing the tracks and cleaning them up with the dozer, they're doing fire burns along them as well. So I've never seen so many burns beside tracks. I just hope the Victorian parks stays the way they are. We're the luckiest state in the country for access to the bush. I see that guy on social media that won the Alone Australia. He's fighting the New South Wales government because, you know, in New South Wales they're just getting locked out of everything, and they're putting massive fees on all the campers so that only really the rich get access to anything anymore. In Victoria we're very lucky. We can still go virtually wherever we want. They are closing a few tracks down, you know, old dead end tracks and stuff like that, but let's hope they don't close any of the really good ones down like this. didn't actually make it down the river for some lunch. I had to pull over just down the track here. Far too peckish. But this is nearly the end of another video, and stay tuned because we finish the rest of Moonlight Spur track and then head up the Jamison Woods Point Valley and have a look at some of the stuff around there and the old gold mining stuff and some tracks off to the left and right of that after we leave the camp down here at Gaffney's Creek in the morning.